Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Please be seated. Picture with me this scenario. It's a snowy evening, but that's all right. You're at home. You've been saving a movie on Netflix you're looking forward to watching for just an evening like this. You settle in on the couch, start the movie, have a good snack at your side. The movie's just getting good. You're getting really involved with it when the power goes out. Lights go out, television goes out, Netflix is gone. You go to the window and you peer out and you see none of your neighbors have power. You feel around for the cell phone. You call National Grid. They assure you that engineers are on the way, but it may be a while. You hunt around for the flashlight, which you find, but it needs batteries, which you don't have. You find the candles and some matches, and you get them set up here and there, and there's a lovely glow. You settle back in on the couch, frustrated that you can't watch the movie, but it's all right. It's kind of nice to be quiet and watch the snow fall by candlelight. After a few minutes, you get up and feel your way down the hall to the bathroom, and you walk in and you flip the light switch, and nothing happens. And you think, and then remember, you've seen the power go out, you called National Grid, you know none of your neighbors had power. What were you thinking? Apparently nothing. Head back to the living room, settle in, trying to read by candlelight. After a couple more hours, you feel your way down the hallway again, you walk in the bathroom and you flip the light switch. And nothing happens. Again, you smack your head. What kind of idiot am I? I relate this story because I read it in a book by Jeremy Dean, Making Habits, Breaking Habits, Why We Do Things, Why We Don't, and How to Make Any Change Stick. The book caught my attention this week as many of us are trying to kind of figure out some new habits for the new year, some new resolutions, how to live life a little better. Mine are the same old silly ones: eat a little better, get to the gym more often, to get off Facebook all the time, etc. I thought maybe he would have some good advice on how to really accomplish those this year so I could move on to new things next year. There's some good news and some bad news about habits, Jeremy Dean writes. The good news is that without habits, we really would be lost. If we had to think about how to tie our shoe, how to take a step, which drawer the knife to make a peanut butter sandwich was in, how to signal that we're going to make a left turn in the car, we would barely be able to get out of bed. Habits make it possible for us to get through our daily life and still have some mental energy left over to enjoy things, to have higher level of functioning. So they're really a good thing. The bad news is that they are incredibly difficult to break and incredibly difficult to form. You may have seen online the kind of common wisdom that it takes 21 days to create a new habit. So if you get to the gym 21 days in a row, voila, you're there. You're a healthy person now. You've created a new habit of going to the gym every day. Not so, Jeremy Dean says. He recounts scientific study after study that says it actually takes more like 66 days to create a new habit. 21 days seems pretty doable. 66 days seems like a way too big of a number, too hard to take on. There is good news, though. He has a series of a number of ways, a number of bits of advice about how to create new habits, new life-giving habits in our lives. I'm not going to relay all of them, but I'll relay one of them. He suggests using what he calls the WOOP plan, which is an acronym standing for Wish, Outcome, Obstacle, and Plan. What you do is you write down your wish that, for instance, I want to keep from getting on Facebook so often. And you write down the outcome, what you think is the best possible outcome out of that. And that might be that you would have more time to do other life-giving things, that you wouldn't get caught in a wormhole of arguing about politics with strangers, that you would just have lived a better life. Then you write down the obstacles that you're likely to face. For instance, it's so easy to get on Facebook. It's on your computer, it's on your phone, it's on your iPad, it's everywhere. That and you're so used to doing it that it's going to be very hard to break this habit. And then he says, and the most important part is to come up with a plan, an implementation intention, he says. And it's good to have in action. So you create some if-then statements. For instance, if I'm about to get on Facebook, about to click on Facebook, then I will get up and have a glass of water, or walk around the block, or do whatever. He says it's better to come up with a positive plan of action rather than just saying, if I'm about to click on Facebook, I won't do it. You're not as likely to have success as if you replace that won't do with some other kind of positive action. These if-then statements can help you get over that hump. So back to the gym analogy, if you find that your obstacle to getting to the gym is that it's cold in the morning, and it's just that seems too much to deal with, he says, make a deal with yourself. If you get up and it seems too cold and snowy or icy to get to the gym, then I will go anyway, but I'll only get on the treadmill for 5 minutes. That at least gets you to the gym and begins to build a good habit of getting to the gym in the mornings. Ways to create new and life-giving habits. To break out of the ruts that we find ourselves, the kind of knee-jerk reactions that we have to the world around us, our tendency to respond to the world in the same way, even though we would like to be different people. I thought about all this week as I studied our very familiar lesson of the 3 kings visiting the baby Jesus on the Feast of the Epiphany. Of course, though, they're not kings according to Matthew. Matthew calls them magi, which our translation calls wise men. Magi is often also translated as sorcerers or magicians. We say there are 3 of them because the hymn we're going to sing in a few minutes has 3. Matthew doesn't say anything about the number of them, but probably none of that really matters. These are folks who are not Jews. They are not members of the nation of Israel. They are from far, far away, and that's the essential information we need to remember about the Magi. And I found myself wondering what their lives were like, how their lives were governed by habits, knee-jerk ways of reacting to the world around them. I picture one of them as a shopkeeper. He sells potions that kind of can deal with your upset stomach or help you sleep a little better, maybe make your neighbor fall in love with you. Another one who's got a tent and he travels around, he sets it up, and he reads your fortune by looking at the lines on your palm. A third one who spends his morning teaching ancient languages to undergraduates and his afternoons in the library poring over old manuscripts, trying to figure out what life was like long ago. He ends up staying in the library late in the afternoon into the early evening, sometimes not getting home until 8 or 9, and his wife is irate because he's not spending any time with his family, and he argues back that he needs to do this work so he can get tenure and make life better for everybody. These 3 magi, they're just everyday folks. They're doing their best to earn a living, put food on the table for their family, save a little money for retirement. But all 3 of them have a sense at the end of the day that they're missing something, that something isn't the way it should be, that somehow there should be more to this life than there is. And they find themselves staying up late in the night, sitting on the front porch, staring up into the night sky, trying to figure out what it is they have missed out on. And all 3 of them separately notice one night a star that they are sure they haven't ever seen before, a new star in the sky, and they can't help but continue to look at it. It seems to be blinking, even winking at them. They try to look away, but they find their attention drawn back to that star. And they try to think that there's really nothing of it, but every time they try and just ignore it, it does something. It bounces up and down, or it blinks, or it wiggles back side to side. Finally, they're tired, they go to bed. They get up the next morning, they make breakfast, go off to work. And the next night, they find themselves on their front porches again, staring up at the night sky, and there is that star again. A few nights go by, and each of them decides to do something about this. The shopkeeper puts a sign up in his door saying, "Gone fishing for a couple weeks." The fortune teller sells his tent and buys a donkey. The professor tells the department it's time for him to take a sabbatical. They go home and have a conversation with their wives, which I can't imagine was a whole lot of fun. And they take off to travel across the desert towards this star, traveling west. They're traveling separately at first, they don't know each other. But eventually, somewhere in the middle of the desert, they meet up because they're going the same direction, all traveling at night so they can see the star. And they decide to continue together because there's strength in numbers and good to have a little company. And one night, after a couple nights of traveling together, they realize that they're all looking at the same thing, and they sort of sheepishly admit to one another that, I'm following that star wherever it goes. I really don't know why I decided to do this. I left behind my wife and kids, a perfectly good job, but I'm doing this anyway. And that makes things better. Now they can talk about what they think this star means. Maybe they think it's leading them to a new land, a promised land, where they can start over and maybe figure out what it is they're missing. Maybe the star is leading them to a hidden treasure that will bring them wealth beyond their imaginings. They talk about one option or another. One of them one night says, maybe the star is announcing the birth of someone really important. And when he says that, the star bounces up and down and gets really bright, and they realize that that must be what it is. The star is the announcement of the birth of, it must be a king, someone really important. The star leads them to Jerusalem, and they get there, and they wander around the streets as foreigners, and they do their best to ask people, although they don't really speak the language, where is he who was born king of the Jews? Most people just ignore them more because they seem crazy. A couple people just argue with them and say, there's no king of the Jews, King Herod is king of the Jews. Finally, they ask a priest who's dressed up in fine robes with a long beard, looking very imposing, where is he who was born king of the Jews? And the priest looks at them seriously and says, you need to go talk to King Herod. King Herod is the king of the Jews. There's no one being born who's king of the Jews. And so they go off to King Herod. King Herod's not too pleased to hear about this, but he decides that the best thing he can do is to send the Magi on their way to find out if this really is the case, if there is a king and they can find him, and maybe they can bring him news of him, and so then Herod can figure out what to do next. The star leads them to Bethlehem and hovers over a simple house, really a hovel. And the Magi don't really know what to do. They figured if a king was going to be born, he'd be born in a palace, or at least a pretty nice house. But they go in anyway, and they find there Mary and Joseph and a very young baby Jesus. And they sheepishly offer the gifts that they bought for the king in Jerusalem, the gold, frankincense, and the myrrh, although now that they're there, they realize that diapers and baby formula would have been a much better idea. Mary does her best to chat and offers to let the Magi hold the baby, but they don't really feel comfortable with this. And after a couple awkward moments of conversation, they turn around and they leave. And they really had planned to go back to Herod. They're talking to one another. There's no reason not to go back to Herod, they thought, and tell him what they found. But that night, each of them separately have weird dreams that somehow seem to be saying not to go back to Herod. They wake up the next morning, and they decide that they'll just go straight home. They won't go back to Jerusalem and talk to King Herod. And maybe that's the end of the story for those three Magi. But I doubt it. I bet that after having made that decision to follow a star across the desert, having had an encounter with the baby Jesus, that when they get back home, they have some hard conversations with their family, but they make some changes. Maybe some small changes, but some changes nonetheless. The shopkeeper decides that he's going to stop selling those love potions because he knows full well they don't work, and he's just cheating people out of their money, and that doesn't feel right. And the fortune teller decides that instead of telling fortunes, he's going to set up a counseling business, help people who are experiencing a lot of stress, who need some help, who are having trouble identifying the blessings in their life. And the college professor teaches his classes in the morning and spends a couple hours in the afternoon in the library, and then packs up and stops by the marketplace and buys some flowers for his wife and spends the evening with his family. Little changes. But they find that instead of sitting on the front porch at night, staring up into the sky, wondering where they went wrong, that they have more of a sense of gratitude for all the blessings that they've been given. Little changes, but life-changing, life-giving. The gift of the Feast of the Epiphany, this manifestation of God in the person of Jesus, is maybe for us an invitation to make the same sort of life-changing, life-giving changes in our habits, to think about how we can make those small shifts in our lives that will make life better for us and for others. Maybe we can start small with those if-then statements. If I'm feeling cranky and depressed, then I will sit quietly for a few minutes and listen to where God may be leading me. If I find myself getting irritated with my spouse or my children or my friends, then I will think of something nice to say. I will try and remember all the blessings, all the good things about them. If something catches my eye, like a star, or a person who needs a little extra help, or some opportunity that didn't present itself before, maybe I will listen to where God is leading me and take advantage of it. May this Epiphany, may this new year be Jesus' blessing to us, and may we be a blessing to others. Amen.